Welcome to the Week 15 edition of the Sharp Football Show. I'm Warren Sharp, as always, joining you guys to discuss and break down what we saw last week, Week 14, and then do a little bit of preview of Week 15. And I hope that you're going to love this show because we've got a lot of video to intersplice in here. We're going to be talking about a lot of things that we saw over the last 2 days of the NFL season that I think is very instructive, is very concerning, in some cases was awesome to see. A lot to get through here. We've got a special guest as well, Coach Kevin Kelley. So before we get into all of those details, I want to make sure that you guys are able to contribute and participate in the show because I love interacting with you guys and you've got great comments and great insight as well. So make sure that you are over on YouTube and search for Sharp Football Analysis. We are live on YouTube. Search for Sharp Football Analysis. That's where this show is housed. We started it up this season, brand new. It's got a nice loyal following, and I love to see you guys in here, and I hope that you guys enjoy this episode of the show. Make sure that you subscribe while you're there and give us a nice thumbs up as well. What do we have on deck for you? Like I said, we've got a big show. I'm going to talk about last night's game in a couple of different ways. Last night's game, it wasn't that exciting. You know, we've got the Cincinnati Bengals and the Dallas Cowboys, and regardless of who won the game, the win percentage in terms of the playoff potential wasn't going to change very much. But there's a couple things that I want to discuss about that game. We've got this A.J. Brown versus Jalen Hurts back and forth tete-a-tete that we need to dig into a little bit as well. And I've got some interesting things to say about the philosophical approach that the Philadelphia Eagles are taking to the 2024 season. The Buffalo Bills, we're going to dig into the Buffalo Bills a little bit. They're coaching what I think might cost them a game here in the playoffs as well. We're going to bring on Coach Kelley. And what we're going to talk about with Coach Kelley is pretty interesting. We're doing some planning for the show and thinking ahead to what we're going to cover with you guys. And, this is obviously a show that I basically take in whatever direction that I want to, what I feel like taking on a given Tuesday. And I started looking at the upcoming schedule. Next Tuesday, December 17th, we're going to be previewing all of the college football playoff games. We're going to build a bracket. We're going to walk through the bracket. We're going to advance different teams. Ryan McChrystal is going to be on. We're going to be diving deep into building out a college football playoff bracket, some of the bets that you guys should be looking to make in the futures market for the college football playoff bracket. That's going to be a ton of fun first year that they're doing that. Next week after that is, guess what? December 24th. That's Christmas Eve. I'm not really going to want to bring a guest on Christmas Eve. We're going to probably do a slightly abridged show Christmas Eve. We're still going to have a show. We're still going to be here. The weekend after that, that Tuesday is December 31st. What day is that? Obviously, that's New Year's Eve. So once again, didn't want to bring a guest on there. And then we got the playoffs. The playoffs are here the week after that. So what I decided to do is we want to bring on Coach Kelley now this week. And we're going to be walking through, if the season ended today, who's going to make the playoffs? What is the biggest strength of those teams? What is the biggest weakness of those teams? If the season ended today, how could any of these 14 teams win the playoffs? But how could one of them trip up and miss out on win the playoffs, win the Super Bowl? How could one of them trip up and fall short of that goal and that expectation? So I'm going to enjoy walking through all the 14 teams that are currently slated. I got a deep dive into strength of schedule for the remaining rest of the season as it relates to the ability for these teams to make the playoffs from a wild card perspective. We're going to look at some of those teams that are on the fringe of making the playoffs and what their schedule looks like compared to some of those teams that are sitting there at the 5th, 6th, and 7th seeds, the last three wild card seeds for each of the conferences. And then we're going to dive into the strength of schedule like we normally do to try to gain some edges for Week 15's games upcoming comparatively to what some of these teams have looked at in the past. So the one thing that I'm not going to do, Jack, is get into that two-step piece of commentary. But I will tell you this. You bring up a great point. I had no idea what this guy was talking about. As it turns out, I think he might have been right. And I wasn't saying he was wrong, but I had no idea. I've never heard this before, that there's a two-step rule in the NFL where if they blow a play dead, but you can take 2 steps and reach the end zone, then they could go back and give you the touchdown. And apparently, like the Football Zebra's Twitter account is saying that that actually is a rule. So I've watched thousands of football games in the NFL, and I've never seen that rule. I've never seen that rule employed in the game, and I have never seen that rule discussed. And I don't think that they even properly, like in the broadcast, discussed what was going on with that rule. And this guy just randomly kind of stumbled as he was trying to deliver what the rule was. And then Joe and Troy never really went back to it. So apparently that it might be a rule. I don't know 100%, but it looks like that might be a rule, that there's a 2-step rule, like traveling in the NBA or something. Very bizarre, Jack. But I thought that was hilarious. We got Exile in here. Good day, everybody. Like and subscribe. UNC sucks. Let's go. Blimey. Yeah, Jack, exactly. And then Exile and Peter talking about the Chase Brown longest reception. So for you guys out there, we do a show every single Friday at noon Eastern, go live, and we talk about my favorite 2 longest completion, longest reception, longest rush props of the week. And I believe we are now, I don't know, 17 and 8, 17 and 9, 18 and 9, something along those lines. It's well over 65% on the season. There was a prop, though. I wanted to give you guys my favorite props of the week. I always try to do that because I want you guys to tune into the show, obviously. So that's not a surprise. And my second favorite one I gave to you on the show, but I kept refreshing the screen, hoping that they would have posted the prop for Monday night. And they didn't post the prop for Monday night yet as of Friday at noon. And it was Chase Brown's longest reception over. There was one spot that had 11.5. We could have given out 11.5 at FanDuel, but I gave it out to my clients at 12.5 because it was 12.5 everywhere. And as a result, they didn't have it up there. I had to wait. I told you guys, come back and check the comments in the YouTube channel and I'll post the prop. So obviously it wasn't for a Sunday game. It was for a Monday game. There might have been if you go back and look at last week's Friday show on YouTube and look at the comments, you'll see it was probably around like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe yesterday, that I posted it. So like 6 or 7 hours before kickoff. But that said, there might have been some of you guys that didn't see it because you assumed it might have been a Sunday game. And so you didn't see that it was there, even though all along I was looking at this Monday night Chase Brown longest. What we'll do in the future, if we go that route of wanting to post a play for the Friday, talk about a play on the Friday show, but the line isn't up or the market's not set, and I still want to use it for the show and give it to you guys, not only will I post it on YouTube in the comments, but I'll also tweet out, hey, the play has been posted in the comments of my show. And so you guys can go and make sure that you get access to it. But that was up there and that was good. Okay, let's hit the first topic here of what is going to be a very busy show. I want to talk a little bit about last night's game. As you guys know, this is kind of the year of the uncalled face mask that easily should have been called and could have been properly assessed using replay assist, but then never was used via replay assist. And it is my belief that this is not hard. The NFL doesn't need to get the competition committee to convene in Jacksonville, Florida in April to have a meeting to discuss what we're going to do about making face mask calls via replay assist able to be corrected. They correct everything else. They correct spots. They correct fumbles. They correct interceptions. They correct completions as it relates to replay assist. And it is brilliant. And the fact it's such a no-brainer that the NFL started utilizing replay assist a little bit here because the announcers are pulling it up on their screen. They're seeing it. And what was happening 2-3 years ago? The announcers would have to try to pretend that really wasn't. Let's pretend that there's a pass that's completed. It's called a completion, but it's really an incompletion, right? And so a team gets a first down as a result, and they're getting ready to snap the ball and call their next play. On the field, it looked like a completion. One team, let's pretend for the sake of argument, they're out of challenges, so they couldn't call it. They bring up the footage like during the play, between the plays, before the team gets off their next snap. And, the guys in the booth are looking at it as like, well, this looks like it probably was incomplete, but they don't really want to say anything because then it looks like the integrity of the game could be messed up. And so they kind of talk past it. We at home are like, what the hell is this? This is clearly an incompletion. They called it complete. This is bullshit. And everybody's up in arms about it. Now this year, they're just correcting it. They show the replay. The announcers are able to say, oh, yeah, that doesn't look like a completion. Boop, boop, boop. The ref blows his whistle. They quickly correct the call. No, we're calling it incomplete. And then the plays continue. There's no commercial break. Everything just gets reset the way that it should be. And that's all us as fans want. We just want the game to be officiated the way that it is being played correctly. Like whatever happens on the field should be officiated as closely as possible. When you have the benefit of the television cameras and all the 8 different cameras on the game, potentially more, and the replays being shown between commercial breaks, just get the damn thing right. And so I believe that the NFL must go in here before the playoffs and call it so that if there is a face mask that was missed and it should have been called, that they correct that. This cannot wait until next year. We can't have teams losing playoff games. Fortunately, the Cincinnati Bengals won that game. But if that face mask is correctly called on Joe Burrow on a 3rd down, they get a first down, they get 15 yards. They're probably going down and kicking a field goal, and they're winning that game far more easily. And it changes so many different things, right? Maybe they do score a touchdown and they still cover the spread. But at a minimum, they are winning that game. Maybe the Cowboys bettors end up winning. It doesn't really have anything to do with betting, though it impacts betting. The point is that cost from a win probability perspective, the Cincinnati Bengals a ton because they did not call that face mask that should have been called. Let's go ahead and play that play.
Get on the football, but and there's a face mask there on Burrow that they missed. That's Leofau coming through, but they didn't see it.
Yeah, a big miss.
A big miss. And there you see, it's 4th and 16. They still haven't snapped the next play. They easily could have called that, corrected it, given the Bengals a first down, and let's keep playing the game. We don't have to have some big old review. So you can get rid of this now. Let's go ahead and get to another thing that our ref analyst that you guys are familiar with, Joe Gibbs, has talked about, and he alerted my attention to it. It's a hip drop tackle that was not called that I guarantee you will get fined. Let's go ahead and play this next clip. Right there, Donovan Wilson comes in, and this meets all the criteria of a hip drop tackle. And to my knowledge, the NFL still has not flagged a single hip drop tackle. They have not called a single hip drop tackle so far this season. Unfortunately, I don't believe the Bengals player was injured, but this guy is lifting himself up, swinging his legs, landing on the back of the legs. The NFL tried to make this rule so damn complicated, like they always do. It has to check off these 6 boxes in order to be called. That's clearly a hip drop tackle. I don't think anybody who watches that and understands what a hip drop tackle is would not think that is. But the refs don't call it. All they're going to do is fine it. How is that going to remove it from the game if they don't call it? How is it going to penalize the Dallas Cowboys at all during the course of the game for tackling a guy in an easier way to tackle the guy and a way that potentially would hurt the player? He does that. Imagine they do that to Chase Brown in the first quarter. Chase Brown or Jamar Chase, even more importantly, in the first quarter, boom, all of a sudden the Dallas Cowboys are very likely to win that game, as close as that game was. So, you can't be allowing these types of tackles to continue, and you put in a rule to try to get them out of the game, but you never call it. Just so frustrating to me. Now, last point on this game. Let's go ahead and put up the last tweet, the next tweet that I have here, where I was predicting this face mask. This was on Chris Jones, and I posted this tweet. I don't know if you can scroll down to see the day that I posted this, but this was a Week 11 game. Yeah, on November 17th, during the course of the Chiefs-Bills game, and I posted, the refs blatantly missed this face mask, but next Saturday, the NFL will go in and fine Chris Jones. I will guess either $11,255 or $16,883, discussing that the NFL will not call it right on the field, but still get a money grab. So then I dug it up last night after seeing the missed face mask go uncalled. I dug it up. Guess what? The NFL did fine this guy. You could pull up the next one. You see that picture I attached to it? The NFL went back and fined Chris Jones in the second quarter with 1:17 left in the second quarter, $11,255. Exactly what I said that they would. They fined Chris Jones for unnecessary roughness for a face mask on a play with 1:17 left. That was the play that we're talking about. So the refs don't call it. It's quite clearly a face mask. But the NFL then goes back and still will fine this guy $11,255. And I also tweeted out yesterday that I will predict, and we'll pull it back up here to show that I'm right. I can already spike the football before it even happens. I know I'm going to be right. They're going to find that guy last night for that face mask on Joe Burrow, $11,255. We'll talk about it in a week. All right, next topic. Enough of my complaining. Let's talk about something fun from the game last night. This Simpsons thing. Now, I don't know how many of you guys out there are Simpsons fans, grew up watching The Simpsons. I didn't really watch that much of The Simpsons growing up, but I did think it was funny. You know, there was definitely some humor there. The characters were pretty entertaining. I'm not a hater of the show. I respect the show. It's a quality show. I thought the last night's game was pretty well done. My one complaint was when you're dealing with all these streaming platforms. I saw one of the guys who follows me tweeted into a tweet that I posted, tweeted into the replies, where he had both of his TVs on. One was to the real broadcast, one was to the Simpsons game, and they were basically synced up, neck and neck. I attempted to get it on the Disney Channel because I didn't have it on ESPN Plus. So I was going on the Disney Channel and tried to play it on the Disney Channel, and the feed was like at least 45 seconds delayed from what I was watching on TV. So it really took all the joy and entertainment out of trying to see what it was going to look like on Simpsons, because it wasn't even close to being the same time. Like the multiple plays potentially were being run in live that weren't being shown on the Simpsons one. I'm not sure what you guys think about what you saw on the Simpsons, but the one thing that I thought is that Moe Szyslak is a beast. I mean, this guy, I watched this tackle. Go ahead and play the first tackle that he had.
Athleticism.
Stays out there for a crucial 4th and 3. Burrow's pass incomplete.
Look at this.
Blown up.
Diagnosed the play. That was probably the best hit that I saw from the Simpsons game is Moe's tackle here. And just the way that he looks, like how lanky he is. He sort of reminds me a little bit of like a Cam Chancellor back in the backfield there. You know, just like laying the lumber down, scoping out what's happening in front of him and coming up and making the stop. And then there was this other clip that got tweeted. I think this was by Barstool Sports. Go ahead and play this next one, where they edited on Moe on top of other receivers making just ridiculous catches and completely going off. Obviously, it's not perfect because they're doing it, you know, they did it last night during the game. Great editing skills, but this was hilarious. Just watching how Moe is just dominating at the NFL level. Just unstoppable. So that was funny. Some fun things. Speaking of TV, I do want to mention this. Hard Knocks. I think there's going to be another Hard Knocks episode tonight. I don't know if you guys are watching HBO, seeing the Hard Knocks. I episodes, but Hard Knocks, to me, the one thing that stood out from watching the first episode of it is the fact that Mike Tomlin, now I see why Mike Tomlin has a little bit more of an edge in this division in the NFL and wins so many of these games. I mean, when you look at the four coaches in that division and they show the different teams and the coaches getting the teams ready for the games, just like the way that, Harbaugh or Taylor, these other guys are talking to their teams and trying to motivate them at their meetings and whatnot. And you see Mike Tomlin up there. It's just a totally different vibe. And then in the shots of him watching the film, just a totally different vibe in terms of what he's focused on and how he goes and gets his team to execute the game plan, what he thinks is going to be important. I feel like there are better coaches in the league, but has Mike Tomlin ever won a Coach of the Year? I know he's not in line to do it this year because Kevin O'Connell, it looks like he's going to win it there up in Minnesota with the job that he's doing. But, I mean, we've got one of the best coaches in the NFL, potentially in NFL history, in Sean Payton. And that offense is lost with Russell Wilson. They can't do a thing. They cannot win games in Denver with Russell Wilson there. And all of a sudden, you've got Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh, and this team can't lose games. This team is winning all of their games. They're beating the Baltimore Ravens. What the Pittsburgh Steelers are doing and Mike Tomlin is doing with Russell Wilson, when another great coach, an offensive-minded coach, was working with Russell Wilson a year ago and couldn't do anything. And Seattle couldn't do anything with him at the end there either. I know there's variance and you could say it's going to regress and he's still not perfect, et cetera, et cetera. It looks like Dan Campbell is probably the shoe-in here to win Coach of the Year. If the Lions continue their run, he's minus 175 favorite. KOC is number 2. And then you've got Mike Tomlin at number 3 with the aforementioned Sean Payton at number 4. But I don't know how many more times that against this schedule, which we'll talk about momentarily at the end of the show, we'll talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers schedule and their schedule moving forward. But the job that he continues to do year in and year out, exceeding expectations set upon his team, through one way or another, winning games. I mean, it's not pretty. There's a lot of critics, myself included, for, hey, they're getting lucky. Hey, this shouldn't be going their way. And I don't know. I mean, at some point, you make your own luck in the NFL to some degree. Look at what the Kansas City Chiefs are doing. Scary part about the Chiefs is, like, when are they getting those receivers back? I mean, this team, we're talking about how they're getting lucky to win these games and whatnot, and they are in many cases, but they're a good team with a great quarterback that's making its own luck, and it's about to get healthier down the stretch with Pacheco getting worked in more. You got 2 receivers that aren't playing on the team right now that were supposed to be their number 1 and number 2 to enter the season. This crazy. Okay. I don't know if we've got Exile says Tomlin handling Pickens was top shelf. That game won't be decided by that play. Absolutely. I could not agree more. I could not agree more with you on that one, Exile, with regards to the comments that Tomlin made after George Pickens and he held him, hands on the shoulders, kind of like a father does to his son, trying to motivate him, next play type of thing. And he was absolutely right. And you just see what some of these receivers do when they leave Pittsburgh. It's pretty remarkable. It's pretty crazy what ends up happening to them there. Okay. So we've got a lot to get to with Coach, but I don't know that we've got Coach yet. So in the meantime, before we've got Coach, let's go ahead and pivot to first, let me tell you this, then we'll pivot to a next subject. And you can keep me updated on whether we got Coach soon, Matt. Okay. We have just started a special. It's show 365. And That's the promo code. You can scan the QR code, or you could go to sharp.football, and enter that code. We've had winning weeks in 11 out of 14 this season. $100 better is up over $11,000, 11,320 through last night's game on the season. And you can get the rest of the season for the price of just 1 week. So if you want to get involved for the rest of the season for the price of just 1 week, head over to sharp.football. Is a great time to get on board. We've already released one betting recommendation for week 15 with more to follow. I'm loving this card. I'm going to talk to you guys about this card at the end of the show. A couple of cards in a row haven't necessarily loved. Obviously had to make a pivot on Sunday when George Pickens was ruled out of that game, which was a little bit of a surprise. And I wanted to get off of that total that we had. Then you have like the Kevin O'Connell injury late in the Kevin O'Connell, KOC. It's not KOC. Aiden O'Connell injury at the end of that Raiders game cost them the opportunity to be a little bit more productive offensively. There hasn't been as many like really great cards. This card, week 15, I think is going to be fabulous. I'm looking at my odds screen right here. I got to talk to you guys about this at the end of the show. So at any rate, you could go ahead and use show 325 to get on board through the rest of the season. Okay, let's go and hit the Jalen Hurts versus A.J. Brown discussion because this is a fascinating one. Okay, most of you guys have probably seen this, but for those of you who have not, and I talked to some people that I know that don't pay as much attention to X throughout the course of the day, but they tune into this show because, fortunately for me, they like me. They want to hear what I have to say. I want to go ahead and play this to get everybody up to speed. So let's go ahead and play the first clip from this section.
Wasn't good enough. What are some things you think that the offense needs to improve on? Passing.
Can you pause this real quick, Matt? Sorry. Just to set the stage here. This is A.J. Brown after the game against the Carolina Panthers last week. And if you rewind it to the beginning, but we'll hear him being asked, what is your comments about the game or something about the game? And he said passing. It's hard to hear him with the music in the background. He said passing. He took issue with the Eagles passing, which is these comments are what sort of started this whole spark. This is a spark that ignited the fire. So go ahead and play this again, Matt.
What are some things you think that the offense needs to improve on? Passing.
AJ, I know everybody wants to get in a rhythm, and Devontae was acknowledging that. You know, receivers, just like running backs, want to get in a rhythm. How hard is it as a receiver to get into a rhythm when you guys are only throwing the ball like 20 times?
Incredibly tough.
It seemed like there was a moment on the sideline when you threw your helmet into the bench. What prompted that reaction?
3 and out.
As a leader on this offense, what's kind of your approach this week in changing the result in terms of everyone, and not just you, a lot of the players on offense saying that this was just not up to the offensive standard?
Putting our head down and just going to work, doing the things we're doing and learning and growing.
What are the conversations like with Jalen during a game like this, where maybe the passing game isn't everything you want it to be?
Not too much conversation, honestly. I don't know.
All right, so the one key to focus in on his comments. So he said it was incredibly, the passing is what needed to be improved. I'm going to come back to this in a second. He said that it was incredibly tough when the team is only throwing 20 passes per game to get into a rhythm. Let's come back to that. I want to get to the next video clip, though. This was Brandon Graham and his radio show that he did yesterday after the game. So he's out for the season, but he obviously was in the locker room. He's part of the Philadelphia Eagles. He'll get a Super Bowl ring if they win the Super Bowl. He's been there for years. He knows these two players involved. When he talks about number 1, that's Jalen Hurts. When he talks about number 11, that's A.J. Brown. Go ahead and run this.
The person that's complaining need to be accountable. And I'm just being honest. You know what I'm saying? Like, and he know this. I don't know the whole story, but I know that one is trying. And I mean, 11 could be a little better with how he responds to things. And they was friends before this. It's like, man, but things have changed, and I understand that because life happens. But it's the business side that we have to make sure that we don't let the personal get in the way of the business, and that's what we got to do better as right now, because we know it's an issue. Everybody's seeing some things, but we need to be able to talk things out as men. You know what I'm saying? But we need to let personal stuff go and let's get right for this game, because, man, it's like a lot of stuff, most of the time it's just a conversation that just need to be had, but the person with the problem got to want to talk to the person other than others. Okay. That's all I'm saying.
All right, so that was Brandon Graham, and he then came back and said, I shouldn't have said those. You know, once those comments got blown up, which everything would, especially with a team that's in second place in the NFC in a city like Philadelphia, and he's talking about the quarterback having beef with the wide receiver, and clearly he's saying that wide receiver needs to, maybe some of the responsibility is his. I mean, that's going to get blown up. I don't know what he's thinking that he wasn't, and then you say something, then you have to come back and apologize. So what is he talking about here? Like, why would potentially A.J. Brown get upset? Well, in the past, I would break this down for you and go through some film. I don't need to do that because we have two really good film guys who did it for us already that I saw yesterday. So I want to bring these to your attention. The first one is Dan Orlovsky. Let's get into a video that Dan Orlovsky shared yesterday.
All right, so conversation in Philly after the game, A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts. A.J.'s asked, okay, what's got to improve or whatnot? And he says, the pass game. And I think this play is pretty representative of what yesterday was, okay? This is not the only one that looks like this. So you're just getting hardball essential play action. You're trying to get downhill play action, and this is a 3-level throw where A.J. Brown's going to run what we call a pylon. There's an inside release, sail, and then a flat route, right? It's 1 down here, 2, 3. And this is really an alert off this defender, okay? If you're the quarterback. If this defender has depth and whatnot, you're then going off this defender. That corner gets out of there, you're going sail to flat route, and you're trying to get him to go up here to throw this ball. You're always having vision on this defender as a quarterback. Okay, if you get nosy, because this safety in the middle of the field, right? If you get nosy, I could take a shot at this pylon. This is about as pretty black and white, clear and wide open as it gets. The pocket is absolutely spectacular. You would say right now that ball should be launched, okay? Doesn't see it, checks it down. This ball's a touchdown. This happened too much yesterday for their pass game.
All right, now the next one I want to get to is Emmanuel Acho, who showed like 6 different plays and a lot faster sequencing than Dan did. Dan did a great job there. Let's get Emmanuel's take on this as well.
Of course, A.J. Brown, the man in the pink cleats, is upset. If he wasn't upset, he wouldn't be human. I'm going to show you all about 6 plays. Right now, back foot. Jalen, you're looking at him. Get rid of the ball. He's open. He's going to come back to the ball. Get rid of the ball, Jalen. If A.J. Brown was not upset, he wouldn't freaking be human. The man in the pink cleats, people. If A.J. Brown, bottom of the screen, if he wasn't upset, y'all, I'm telling you, he wouldn't be human. It is human for him to be this open. He's open. Let it rip, Jalen. He's open. You're looking at him. The ball's cocked. Let it rip. If he wasn't upset, he wouldn't be human. Look at A.J. If A.J. wasn't upset, I'm telling y'all right now, as a human, it is only fair that A.J. be upset. Right now. Watch him. Man in the pink cleats. Let it rip. 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 The very next time, the Eagles run essentially this exact same play. The same play. Roughly the same play. In breaking route. This time, Jalen does let it rip. Completion. A.J. Brown. Break tackle. First down. If A.J. Brown was not upset, he wouldn't be human. That's what I'm trying to tell y'all. Of course he's upset. You would be upset. Man in the pink cleats. Top of the screen. Hey, it's one-on-one, Jalen. It's one-on-one. Post safety is not even leaning his way. You have A.J. Brown, a top 5 receiver in football, one-on-one, and the post safety is not even leaning his way. Give the man a shot. You know what they say in football. If he's even, he's leaving. If A.J. Brown was not upset, he would not be human. It is only human to be mad at this. Now, this is a touchdown play. Make no mistake about it. But why make it so difficult on yourself? Man-to-man coverage. Pitt. AJ, if he wasn't upset, he wouldn't be human, y'all. I mean, dude's wide open. I get it. It's a touchdown. Shout out to the Eagles for winning the game always and forever. But why take the easy route? AJ Brown, pink cleats. You can't even miss him. If he wasn't upset, family, he wouldn't freaking be human. You'd be mad too.
This guy said it a lot better than I could, right? In showing you the film. AJ Brown is there, and I can tell you there's nothing more frustrated than a number one receiver who he knows when he's open and when he's not, right? AJ Brown is one of the best in the game. He's run so many routes at the professional level. He knows when he's got the coverage that he should be targeted on a play. He knows when he beats the coverage when he should be targeted on the play. And in so many of those clips, Jalen Hurts is looking at him when he is there, when the ball should be in the air, because this is a defense where the pass should be going to him, and he's got the open. He's beat his defender, and the ball is just not coming to him. So there's a lot of frustration there, clearly, between the two. Rich Rebar has this incredible stat. Since the Eagles' Week 5 bye, I want you to listen to this. This is amazing. AJ Brown, this is since the Eagles' Week 5 bye. Okay, we're now entering Week 15. AJ Brown has 13 total targets in the second half of games. Maybe there's a couple more that he got last week. Add whatever he got last week to this number because I didn't do that. In the second half of games, he has 13 targets. He has run 54 routes in the second half of those games. 6 routes per game. The Philadelphia Eagles are not getting this passing game lubed up and ready for the playoffs. And I want you to think back, if you watch this show, if you're a regular listener to the show, if you're new here, go to YouTube, subscribe to the Sharp Football Analysis show over there and give me a thumbs up. But if you're new here and you didn't hear me last Tuesday, I had the same type of issues with the Green Bay Packers as I am having right now with the Philadelphia Eagles. You could love the fact that your run game is efficient, but if your passing attack is not lubed up, ready for the postseason, what happens when you get into one of those playoff games and you fumble the ball? Or the other team that you're playing comes out and puts up some points early. And all of a sudden you're in a 10-0 hole and you have to turn to the passing game. You can't just rely on the run game and just run out the clock in the second half of these games. And your passing game is not synced up, is not functioning, is not hitting on all cylinders right now. That is going to be a problem. And so that was my concern for the Green Bay Packers. Like, hey, it's great. Like, let's win a few games because my run game is good. But stop falling in love with that at the expense of not making your receivers happy, not having good chemistry between receivers and quarterbacks, not producing statistics through the air, because you're going to need that come the playoffs. I talked about it with the Green Bay Packers. I'm talking about it now with the Philadelphia Eagles. It is insane that he's had 13 targets in the second half of games since week 6. It's insane to watch that film and see how open he was on a designed pass play and him not being targeted. And then last point I want to make on this. I'm going to go here and I'm looking at all of the Eagles games since they won that 2017 Super Bowl where they lost in the postseason. I think this is going to be really eye-opening for you guys. If you're Eagles fans or you want to know the direction that the Eagles need to go here offensively, I'm telling you, I'm not wrong with this. In 2018, so they win the 2017 Super Bowl, they lost to the New Orleans Saints. Final score, 20-14. They scored only 14 points in their loss in 2018 in the playoffs. They had a first-round loss in 2019 to the Seattle Seahawks. They lost that game 17-9. They scored only 9 points in that loss. In their 2021 loss, they also had a first-round loss, didn't even win another playoff game in that year. They lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 31-15. They scored just 15 points in that loss. In 2022, we know they went all the way to the Super Bowl, battled the Kansas City Chiefs. In 2023, they also lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You know what that final score was? 32-9. They put up only 9 points. So I'm looking back here at this Eagles high-powered, great-looking offense, and I'm looking at their losses in the playoffs since they won the Super Bowl in 2017. And in those losses, they're putting up 14 points, 9 points, 15 points, and 9 points. This team is not even scoring 16 points in these playoff games, and they're losing them. And that's because their offense is not firing, and they've got to figure it out here in the rest of the regular season. I don't care if they go 4-0. If they don't get this passing attack on track, they're not going to have success in the playoffs. I'll bet a large amount of money on that. Speaking of which, we got Coach here. We're going to get into Coach in one quick second. I want to let you guys win something, because I don't think anybody's going to win this, but I'll just for the hell of it, I'll say it anyways. As soon as I'm done with this show, I've got something that I got to go do. It's like a chore kind of thing. It's a task I have to do. I'll tell you what it is at the end of the show, but I'll give the winner $100. I'll send it to you. If you can guess, you get one guess. So think about it for a little bit. You get one guess in the chat. Guess what I'm going to be going to do as soon as this show is over. Go ahead and guess that. It's not an appointment. Like it's not like a doctor's appointment or a dentist appointment or something like that. It's like a kind of like a chore, like a task that I have to do. If you guess it, I'll give you $100. It's something unusual that I don't normally do. That's why I'm throwing it out there. Okay. Let's bring Coach on. I cannot wait to talk about these playoff teams with Coach Kevin Kelley. Let's bring him on. All right, we got Coach Kevin Kelley here from his office. Coach, you got me here?
I do. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you for filling in. We've been talking about this show for a little while. I wasn't sure when we were going to do it. Now's as good of a time as any, though, with the holidays coming up and the schedule coming up, Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve on some of these Tuesday shows. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about these 14 teams, and I want to first start in the AFC. And if you can flash up the graphic for us to see, Matt, with regards to the teams in the AFC that are currently forecast to be in the playoffs. You got the Chiefs, Bills as 1 and 2. We got the Steelers, Houston Texans as the other two division winners in the AFC North and South. And then the wild card teams are the Ravens, Chargers, and the Denver Broncos. Before we get into talking about this, and we'll bring this graphic back up, I want you to flash up the future strength of schedule for the Can you toss up that graphic for the future strength of schedule? There we go. Okay, so if you're new to watching the show, left to right on the top graphic is the past strength of schedule from weeks 1 to 14, overall strength of schedule for all 32 teams in the NFL. So the Arizona Cardinals have had the most difficult schedule of opponents. The Rams have had the second most. The Packers have had the third most difficult, and so on. The Washington Commanders have had the easiest schedule. The Pittsburgh Steelers have had the second easiest schedule. And down at the bottom, I've highlighted the teams that have the this is the future strength of schedule for the last 4 weeks of the regular season. So the Pittsburgh Steelers have the third most difficult, they're on to the far right, third most difficult schedule moving forward through the last 4 weeks of the season after having the second easiest schedule from weeks 1 to 14. You look in the boxes are all the 7 teams that we're going to discuss here. Those are all the teams that are currently slated to make the playoffs. So some of the teams that have the easiest switch in strength of schedule are like the Baltimore Ravens, who have had an above average difficulty of schedule and now going to have one of the easier schedules moving forward. Same thing with like the Indianapolis Colts, who are borderline, and the Buffalo Bills. So those teams are going to have easier schedules moving forward. The teams that are going to have more difficult schedules moving forward, as I mentioned, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Denver Broncos, the Houston Texans, Kansas City Chiefs have an easier schedule, but it still is more difficult than some of these other playoff teams, although they don't need to do much in order to lock up a first-round bye. So let's bring it back to the 7 teams in the graphic. And, Coach, I'm going to just go through these team by team with you, if that's all right with you. And I want to start with the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'd like you to share a reason why you think the Kansas City Chiefs are set to win the Super Bowl? And then we can talk about a reason that you like, one concern you have about that team.
The easy answer for why they would win the Super Bowl is because they have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. And Patrick Mahomes, just like you saw for the millionth time, it seems like, against the Chargers, when it's on the line, he finds a way to get it done. He runs around. He on that last play that made the first down for him, draws the defender to him from Travis Kelce, flips it over his head. He can do a lot of things in a lot of ways. So if you've got that guy, you got the best quarterback in the league, and you got the best play caller in the league. And their defense is pretty good. It's not as good as I don't think it's as good as everybody else thinks it is. But that all said, that's why they can win the Super Bowl.
Okay, so I don't disagree with you at all there. It's just that combination, that experience, the ability to. What I like about them, Coach, is if everything goes right for them in a given game, like their game plan is going to work perfectly. They're going to be able to get the run game involved a little bit. They're going to be able to pass the ball. Like everything's going right, they're winning. But in the instance that everything doesn't go right, and you think about this team is going to have to come back from a deficit, they're built to do that. They've got a passing attack, which I keep talking about some of these teams, unlike the Pittsburgh Steelers, unlike the Green Bay Packers. This passing attack is lubed up. It's synced up. It's only getting better. They've got the tight ends out there and the running backs that can catch passes for easier slam dunk throws for a quarterback. The receiving core is going to come on a little bit down the stretch as I think some of that health improves. That probably is the weak chink in the armor. But what is the one thing, Coach, that you think could hold this team back from winning the Super Bowl this year?
Well, it's really, I was going to say, it's the fact that you can't keep playing these close games and sustaining this winning percentage. But that's not it. It's the reason why they're playing this close games. And if you look at it the last 2 years, and they won the Super Bowl last year too, but if you look at it, Patrick Mahomes is throwing the ball a shorter amount of air yards down the field than he's ever had to throw it before. As a result of that, we know what that means. That means no explosive plays or less explosive plays. And that means you have to run more plays properly without screwing up, without a holding penalty, without a sack given up, and that kind of stuff, drive killers. And they've not been able to take advantage of that and reduce those number of plays with explosive plays nearly like they had in the past. And what that does is the better that the other teams are, the more situations you give them, they're going to cause the Chiefs offense to make mistakes in those elongated 12 play, 14, 15 play drives. And they've not had to do that in their first couple of Super Bowl runs. And last year they did it, and I didn't think they would last year. But this year, they're not able to do those explosive plays. And if you look at what they've got on 3rd and 10 against the Chargers, was a perfect example to me. Mahomes gets pressured, moves up. He looks up and happens to see Worthy open in the middle of the field. Now, Worthy's still learning how to run that offense and doesn't always run to the open spots. So the inconsistency level there has caused him some problems when he does have to make his own plays, Patrick Mahomes. And then defensively, it's the same thing. I think their defense is vulnerable. I think teams have figured out ways to exploit what Spagnuolo is going to do. And I'm surprised they haven't figured it out sooner. You know, in certain situations, exactly what he's going to do. He's going to bring the whole house, and you've got to have answers for that. The Chiefs, oddly enough, are the only ones that seem to have answers week in, week out for those situations. And even then, they're not great. But I think that in itself, the unsustainability of how they're winning these games overall and why is the reason they're not going to win the Super Bowl. And I tweeted out last week, the Chiefs will not win the Super Bowl this year.
I remember, and you talked about that on our show, I think a few weeks ago as well. And I don't disagree. One of the surprising factors here, I don't disagree with your take on one reason that they should struggle more than they do is why aren't other teams more prepared for what Spags is going to bring? And I think it just comes down to coaching. I just don't think some of these teams are as studied or equipped to handle those situations and drill it down. And that's on them. But let's move to the Buffalo Bills now, who gave the Chiefs their only loss of the season. And the Buffalo Bills are sitting at 10-3, 7-2 in the conference, second place, and obviously in the AFC East, going to win that thing. Talk to me a little bit about why you think the Buffalo Bills could be poised this season to win the Super Bowl.
I think they're utilizing James Cook way better in the running and in the passing game, and Khalil Shakir. I think utilizing both those guys' quickness, running option routes with both those guys gives them a lot of things they can do, because if you can't guard those guys one on one on option type routes. So you've got to commit another linebacker to cheat out a little bit for inside leverage on that so they can play outside, and that opens it up for Josh Allen. So they're really making their teams pick their poison this year. And they're either picking Josh Allen running the ball from the pocket, or they're picking getting beat one-on-one by Cook or Shakir. I think they're doing that better than ever. I think that Diggs leaving was addition by subtraction. I don't think that Allen feels forced to get him the ball on those low percentage routes. A lot of times the back shoulder fades, which are great if you're doing them. I didn't feel like he was great at them. On those back shoulder fades, you're not forced to get it to him or throw him the ball on slants and in tight windows when everybody knew you had a tendency to do that. And those option routes create a lot of openness for him. And I think they've still got the threat of the long ball when they want to, and because they know Josh has a super strong arm, that backs people off and lets those option routes have a little more room underneath. And I think that's the number one reason. And then I think getting Matt Milano back on defense. I remember when I was with the Patriots, and I was talking to Bill Belichick about him. He just thinks the world of Matt Milano, and he doesn't speak super highly of a lot of guys. He doesn't throw out empty compliments. And he just said, this guy is a great linebacker, great football player. And that's a guy they always keyed on. I think having him back is going to be a huge thing on the defense.
Yeah, that team offensively, they're about to get healthier as well as we go down the stretch here, because they're going to be getting some of those receivers and Dalton Kincaid back as well. So look forward to that potentially this week in a massively important game against the Detroit Lions. If the Buffalo Bills, even though it's out of the conference, if they want to try to keep pace with the Kansas City Chiefs there. Give me a reason, though, why you think the Buffalo Bills won't get it done.
If Josh Allen falls back into turning the ball over, he's had the best year he's had, not turning the ball over with the fumbles and the interceptions and that kind of thing. And I think the only way they're my – them and the Lions, they're my pick to get there for the AFC, and that's an easy pick. But the way they would not is if Josh Allen starts turning the football over, or if Josh Allen gets hurt.
Yeah, Josh Allen puts a lot on his shoulders. I talked a little bit about how Josh Allen runs the ball more in these close games. So does Patrick Mahomes. So does Jalen Hurts. And Lamar Jackson, we'll get to him in a minute, but that's the exact opposite of what Lamar does. He actually runs it less compared to other games, which doesn't make any sense at all. They need to use his legs more, but that is one thing. Josh Allen getting dinged up along the way potentially could impact him. Let's go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. As I mentioned earlier, the Pittsburgh Steelers have played the second easiest schedule in the NFL. And actually, if you can flash up the graphic comparing the Steelers to the Ravens rest of the season schedule, take a look at this, Coach, if you can see it. I've got the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've played the second easiest schedule year to date. And if you look at that last stretch, I said that their schedule becomes the third most difficult over the last 4 weeks of the season. They're done playing the Cleveland Browns. They should have potentially won that game in the snow if they had played a little bit better, and that might come back to bite them. We'll see. But they've got this game on the road against the Philadelphia Eagles. They have the Ravens. They have the Chiefs. And then, of course, they have the Cincinnati Bengals, which definitely could be checked out by that point in the season, Week 18. Compare that to the Baltimore Ravens, who get the Giants. They get the Cleveland Browns in the last game of the season. And also the only real game besides that Steelers that they have to tangle with is the Houston Texans. So still a lot left to be decided in the AFC North. But talk to me about the Pittsburgh Steelers. What's something you like about this team that gives you optimism that they could potentially go on a run and win the whole thing?
And what I like about them is, we talked about this when I was on your show earlier. Remember when they were trying to decide between Justin Fields and I caught a lot of grief after your show on my personal social media from guys berating me about, they're 4-2 with Justin Fields. And I said Russell Wilson's going to be the guy. I think this is perfect for him and what he wants to do. I think he's going to look to throw first and open some things up. And he's done just that, and I think he's a leader in there. But what they're going to do is I love the fact now that they feel like if they can't run the ball, and we know the Steelers, that's their identity. That's who they are. That's what they want to do. if they can't run the ball, they can sure play action off of it. And the way Russell Wilson throws his deep balls are perfect for what they need to do and how they throws that moon ball. And the angle it comes down makes it difficult. And it's way different than any other throw that the defenders see on that type of throw. And I think what he brings to the table, and he's going to continue because he's not being somebody he's not right now. He's being somebody he is. That, along with that tremendous defense, in my opinion, they're one of the teams that can beat you two real ways. They can beat you in a shootout, and they can beat you in a low-scoring game because of that defense. So that's why I think they can. That's why I think they can make a run.
Yeah, the crazy part is if the season ended today and the Pittsburgh Steelers were to make it to the postseason, I mean, this team, they'd be playing the Baltimore Ravens again. No? Am I wrong about that? Or they'd be playing the LA Chargers. So they'd be hosting the Chargers, which they already played earlier this season and beat the Chargers. And we got Exile mentioning how you did nail it with Russ over Justin Fields. Great job on that. They'll be playing the Chargers. Then they'd be taking on potentially the Baltimore Ravens. So this team has a path. What's one thing that you think could ultimately hold them back, though?
I think it's a graphic that you guys may have put up on Sharp Sports Analytics a few weeks ago. They play the least amount of too high in all of football, and I think that they need to mix it up on defense a little bit more. I mean, they play one high so much because they want to. And their efficiency is not bad in two high, but they play one high because they want to commit that extra defender to stop the run. They want to be able to show more stunts and blitzes in the box with that front. But I think they need to mix it up because the really good teams are going to be able to take advantage of that one high safety a little more down the seams or with smash routes, inverted smashes underneath the corners, having to play deep thirds and stuff like that. I just think they're going to be able to do that with the better when they see teams, because when you're playing when you're playing when you're playing in the regular season, it's one thing. But when people look in the playoffs and they grind a little harder, and they do, whether we think they do or not, they start picking things apart. I just see those seams open against that one high, and I see that as a weakness for Pittsburgh that can be taken advantage of.
Yeah, I remember when we talk about the Kansas City Chiefs potentially in a rematch with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They haven't played in 3 years. It's surprising. In the AFC, some of these teams are playing each other, even though they're outside of the division, every single year because they always are finishing in the same spot. But the Pittsburgh Steelers haven't been winning the AFC North. The Kansas City Chiefs have been winning the AFC West. So they haven't played for 3 years. And, people might remember when Alex, what's his quarterback's name for the Kansas City Chiefs? Alex Smith was in some low scoring battles with the Pittsburgh Steelers before Andy Reid really was getting him going back in the 2015, 2016 timeframe. But the last several years, the Kansas City Chiefs were putting up 42. They won 42-10. They won 36-10. They won 42-37. And one of the things you might be dialing into, Coach, is when you were with the New England Patriots, I remember how the New England Patriots would also similarly have so much offensive success against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, the Steelers look great against some of these other teams they match up well against. Then they go up against a team like the Kansas City Chiefs offense or like the New England Patriots offense in years past with Brady, and it just seemed like everything was working against this defense, and that might lean into some of the predictability that you're discussing there.
Well, and we know, this. Y'all put up the numbers all the time against some quarterbacks that are great against one high, and some quarterbacks that are terrible against one high. Whether it's their scheme or whether it's the quarterback himself, and some that are really good against too high, and some that are bad against too high. And then you got some that are good against anything. And a one high safety leaves more room for. If you've got a quarterback that's adept to doing it, it leaves more room for big plays down the hashes or just outside the hashes down those seams. And you're going to see a good quarterback take advantage of that eventually in the playoffs.
I don't disagree. All right, let's move on to the Houston Texans, a team battling for the AFC South in very good position there, but they've got the Indianapolis Colts not too far away from them. What's one thing that you like about the Houston Texans that you think could be a reason that they go as far as they can? And don't know if it's realistic to project that they could potentially win the Super Bowl, but what is the best thing that you like about this team that gives them the highest ceiling?
This is one of the ones where the answer is the same to both questions. The running game, the addition of Joe Mixon and what he's able to do, I think has really taken a load off of C.J. Stroud. I think it's made their play action a little bit better. And we all know play action is good regardless of whether you're good at running the football or not. But I think it's made his play action a little bit better. And then before you even ask the question, their reliance on too much of that run game is I think, going to keep them from getting too far. I think they rely on it too much. They run the ball a little bit too much on early down situations. Later in the game, when they've shown that this week they can't run the ball in early down situations and be successful, and then putting C.J. Stroud in a bad situation in that offense. And so I really think their reliance on the run game has really helped them, but they've got to find the optimum level. And we all know this. If you give me 3 homemade chocolate chip cookies, I want more. If you give me 6, that's perfect. But if you make me eat 20, I'm sick at my stomach. And right now, I think the Houston Texans are sick at their stomach over too much reliance on early downs of running those footballs, or second and long and running the football and put them in a third and bad situation.
That is a great point, a great analogy as well. And this is a common theme with some of those teams in the NFC that are having more success than the Houston Texans, but they don't have the passing game going. And I'm talking about the Green Bay Packers. I'm talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. And the same could be said about that Houston Texans offense. The passing attack doesn't look the same as it did last year. And that reliance on a new running back, the shiny new toy, that you feel so comfortable that you can give him these carries, that he can take the pressure off of your offense. But what it does at times, if those runs aren't successful, which they aren't in Houston, whereas in Green Bay, they've been a little bit more of, though that's trending downward. And in obviously Philadelphia, it's been a lot of success. When you don't have that success on early downs for some of those runs, then you're putting your quarterback in terrible positions late when your offense isn't synced up from a passing perspective. And that is definitely worrisome heading into the postseason. Let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens with Lamar Jackson. There's obviously some positives. There's obviously some negatives. This is a very polarizing quarterback, a very polarizing team. I'm interested to hear what's one thing you really like about them in terms of their upside to win this whole thing in 2024.
I love the fact that on offense, they can beat you in so many ways. And they can beat you with Zay Flowers. I mean, look at Bateman and what he's done a couple of games when nobody was looking at him. Isaiah Likely, if they wanted to get him more involved, he can beat you. He's going to be a really good tight end in this league. And then and you look at Mark Andrews, he's coming back. He's playing really well. You've obviously got Derrick Henry. You've obviously got Lamar Jackson. They can beat you in so many ways. Sometimes I think they've got too many ways they can beat you with all the play action off of Lamar Jackson, able to throw the ball and the way it opens up routes for all those receivers. Sometimes I think it's too much, and I think that they lose. I think Monken can lose sight of the fact that things that they can do really well that game because he wants to do so many things instead of going to the well that's wide open so often. But because they can do that, I don't think there's anything that you can just say, we're going to take that away and they're going to struggle. And I think that gives them an easier path to the Super Bowl.
I do want to mention one quick thing here. Producer Matt was talking about it. What do you think about Bill Belichick's interest in UNC? I'm just interrupting here because we got some news this morning. There is Jordan Schultz reported an hour ago. As of this post, there's no agreement between Belichick and the University of North Carolina. Both sides have remained in contact and will continue to talk. It's very fluid. Knowing Coach like you do you think that there's any chance that he goes back to college instead of trying to find a pro job? Do you think he would choose a place like North Carolina? Any opinion whatsoever on this before we talk about the negative for the Ravens?
Yeah, strictly opinion, but I at first I honestly thought it was Bill allowing his name. They probably contacted him, allowing his name to be out there just to tell everybody, "Hey, world, I'm ready to get back into football." And not necessarily college football, but just say I'm ready to get back into football, so pro teams would know, and because obviously they can't reach out or do much yet. So I think that was the case there. And I at first I couldn't see him going to college, but then I started thinking about it, and I thought, if anybody could revolutionize, he was so good in the draft and getting supplemental picks and working the salary cap and doing things like that. If anybody could take this NIL and put it on its head and take advantage of it before everybody caught up for a couple of years. I think that would be him. And then I saw him talking on the Pat McAfee show. Last time we had texted back and forth was a couple of weeks ago. So I haven't bothered him during this time. I just don't bother him when he's doing stuff like this. But on the Pat McAfee show, he talked about, look, if I did this, I would want to run it like a pro team. We would be like a next step. We'd be doing pro drills. We'd be getting guys ready, learning how to conduct themselves in the facility, how to take it more like a business at times, and all those things. And I think he believes, and if anybody could, he could make them do that. The players joke around. I saw Brady and Edelman and Gronk on a video saying that we don't see him doing this, and they were like, making fun, being like, "Hey kid, we don't care if you come here or not. I guess we'll take you if you want to." When he's recruiting, kind of mocking him as a recruiter. But at the same time, I think he's a kind of person that could spin that on its head and go, look, here's the deal. You come here and do good, you're going to make a lot of money in the NIL, and I'll help you get in the NFL. And he's believable because he is what he is. He's not the normal recruiter that's going to chest bump you and tell his parents he loves you and he loves them and all that kind of stuff and build you up. They're going to know what they get when they get there, and I think there's going to be less downside for him. So I could see him doing it, but I don't think that's what he'll end up doing.
I don't know this guy. I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy. There's somebody, though, on Twitter named Ollie Connolly. He's a newsletter guy, previously was a scout. So I would probably trust this if it came from somebody else. But he apparently says that he's tweeting up a storm here right now, that Bill Belichick has agreed to become the next coach, but they have to make a decision on whether or not they want him to be the coach. He handed the school a 400-page, quote-unquote, organizational Bible with structure, payment plans, staffing choices, etc., on whether to commit with UNC, and he is expected to know their decision within 24 hours. His Bible would require historic levels of investment from the school, including salary minimums, position by position, and a willingness to hire two staffs, a coaching staff run by Belichick and a recruitment staff run by a sitting college GM who would require a buyout. Belichick has a college and pro version of his updated manual and has shared it with other schools and NFL teams, but he drafted a new aspect of the program and school. He will need to sign off from AD, chancellor, trustees, and boosters. There has been pushback from the group of 13 trustees with input from wider faculty. The investment would overhaul the school's approach to football. Belichick is unsure if the school will meet the demands and is unwilling to negotiate. So according to this guy, which I never heard of him before, but he's saying that this is a non-negotiable thing, and this is my way or the highway. This is what I would take for me to go there. And then you've got somebody who I have heard of more before, Jordan Schultz, saying there's nothing here yet. So I guess we'll see what ends up coming of that.
Well, that's just what I was talking about. If Bill's going to do that, I could see him just completely spinning it on its head and doing it a different way. And that would be a very different way. We're going to coach. You hire somebody to recruit. We're not going to do both of those things. And so he's taking care of all the things that people said that he wouldn't or couldn't want to do, and put it out there and said, this is how we're going to do it if we're going to do it this way. Now, if that is correct, and I've never heard of this guy either. If that is correct and it's laid out that way, I could see him accepting a position if that was all laid out and that they agreed to every bit of that.
All right, so we'll see. Obviously, we're not going to see you through the holidays here, so I wanted to get your take on that, even though there's nothing confirmed at all right now. But as somebody who is very familiar with Coach Belichick and has worked with him in the past, wanted to get your take on that. Okay, we'll go back to the Baltimore Ravens before we hit these last two AFC teams quickly. What's one thing that you're most concerned with the Baltimore Ravens and how they could get derailed here in the postseason?
I think it's the same thing that a lot of people would say, and that's that defense and giving up some of the plays that they give up some of the yards that they give up. I mean, for forever and a day, the Baltimore Ravens were known for just that defense, that strong, tough defense. And, some of the numbers are going to be heightened because of the fact that people get into scoring matches with them because that offense is so efficient. and they can get up and down the field, put points on the board, and it's just going to happen that way. The numbers are going to be there because there's more possessions in a game and things. But at the same time, that defense, we've seen it for the last couple of years. And I think back a couple of, what was it? It was either last year before, when they had the Dolphins down by 14 and the Dolphins come roaring back in the last couple of minutes. And the Dolphins offense obviously is great, but they've been shown in many times in the last year that you can put up numbers and you can put up points on that defense. And if you can do that, then you've always got a chance to win. So hopefully they'll shore that up. They play a kind of a bland defense. They don't blitz a lot. It was tailor-made to stop some teams, but it's not tailor-made to stop all the teams. And I think that's what could cause them some problems.
All right, let's pivot over to, we talked about one Harbaugh's team, John Harbaugh. Let's talk about Jim Harbaugh's team, the LA Chargers. Obviously, we got Ladd McConkey. He's injured now. We got Will Dissly. He just hurt himself in Sunday Night Football's game, the tight end, who's very valuable, had a good chemistry there with Justin Herbert. Wasn't getting a ton of targets, but was useful when being targeted. What is something that you like about the way that the Chargers are built that could give you optimism that they have a shot to go all the way?
I personally think the Chargers are done. If they can't get McConkey and Dissly back, I think that's a problem for them. As a matter of fact, I as much as I finally bet against the Chargers when I found out McConkey was out, I should have gone with them because the Chiefs always play a close game. But that said, I think that they're still great, really good on defense. They can still get after the passer. They still got some guys that can play coverage, and they're getting better and better at that. But they're going to have to ride that defense. And I still think they've got one of the better quarterbacks in football, Justin Herbert. I like what they're doing on offense with him. He's starting to run the ball. We talked a couple of weeks ago about when he's run for 18 yards or more in a game, they've won all their games or whatever, I think. Or how much better they'd been. They were scoring like 10 points a game more when Herbert ran for 18 yards or more in a game. So if he'll continue to do that and put those linebackers in a situation where they've got to stay and not drop in those passing lanes, at least they can still get the ball out and get it open and get some of those guys and help their receivers that aren't great. Palmer and Johnson aren't great, but they can help them by keeping those linebackers in check.
I don't want to belabor this and get to the next team. It sounds like because of those injuries, that could be one of the main reasons that you don't think they could get far enough. If you have anything else to add, go ahead and just butt in. But otherwise, we can go and talk about the Denver Broncos here. What's something that you liked about what Sean Payton has done with Bo Nix that gives you a little bit of optimism that they're headed in the right direction here as a team that theoretically could play a dark horse, no pun intended, in the AFC playoff picture?
What I like that he's done really pisses me off at the same time. He had Russell Wilson, and they had a bad offensive line. Don't get me wrong. But their plays that they were running on offense and their route combinations and things were terrible with him. And he didn't open the playbook. He didn't let him do much. He put him in terrible situations in the passing game by running it too much on early downs. And he's really, really opened it up with Bo Nix. And I think that's really good. And I think that is obviously they've got some weapons on offense, and I think McLaughlin, the little running back McLaughlin, is going to be a really good use. And I think they used Courtney Mims last week and the week before. That enabled to be open, but he's opened up the playbook, gotten back to his old self that he looked like with Drew Brees a little bit. And Bo Nix is getting a little bit better. I wasn't big on Bo Nix because he didn't throw the ball very far down the field against Oregon, and you're going to have to against in the NFL to be successful eventually. And so I think him opening it up is what he's done that I think is really going to give them a chance because that defense is really good.
All right, let's pivot over to, real quick, a reason that you think that this team is not realistically going to be able to get it done.
Bo Nix is still a little bit loose with the ball. I could see him, he still relies on leaving the pocket too early, in my opinion. And one of these times, it's just so much easier to fumble the ball or to make a mistake down the field when you leave the pocket. And I think he leaves it a little bit too early. I think he's a little bit more prone to mistakes than some of the guys that stay and run when they have to. And I think eventually that'll cost him.
Okay, let's pivot over to the NFC, and we'll start at the top. I mean, it's so amazing how much I think better at the top the NFC is right now than the AFC. But you got the Detroit Lions sitting there at 12-1, with the Philadelphia Eagles sitting at 11-2, breathing down their necks, and then you got the Minnesota Vikings also sitting at 11-2, and they're sitting as a wild card team right now, an 11-2 team right now as a wild card team. Absolutely amazing. Let's talk about the Detroit Lions though. Is a team right now on track to get the first round bye. What is the biggest reason why you think that they could go all the way in 2024?
Well, I mean, the easy answer is the offense, be able to put points on the board, and the aggressiveness of Dan Campbell. And you call it aggressiveness, but I call it just the efficiency and the way he decides whether he's going to go for it on fourth down or not. But the real thing is how much they responded on defense with the loss of their star defensive lineman, Aiden. I forgot his name.
Hutchinson.
Yeah, Aiden Hutchinson. They responded well. They're still getting pressure on the quarterback, and that defense is held up. And as a matter of fact, I think it's made their defensive secondary even stronger. And what I mean by that is it's something can flip in a pro's head when he knows, wait a minute, we're not getting after the quarterback. I've got to cover a little longer. I think those guys dove in and they've done a better job. They used to be kind of weak across the middle, and I think they've done a better job there. But I think they're just playing a lot better on defense without Aiden Hutchinson than I ever thought they would. And I think that's the key to them being better, because they've always been able to, move the ball up and down the field the last few years, but now they're playing better defense.
All right, Matt, why don't you throw up the graphic real quick of the strength of schedule while I talk to Coach about what's one reason that the Detroit Lions may not go all the way this year? What's one thing that you are most concerned with that could hold them back?
Most concerning is, and it shouldn't be a concern yet, is, man, they like to run the ball on third and long or third and mid more than anybody else. And while they're very efficient at it so far, and that often could be because they are willing to go for it if they get to fourth and short. But I think there comes a point where they're so used to doing that. What I think will happen is in the playoffs, somebody's like, screw this. We're not going to let you beat us running the ball. It's easy to turn and hand off than it is to block and throw it where you've got to and things like that. I think that if they're faced with that situation where they're not able to do it, I think that they probably still rely on it, and it puts them in some bad fourth down situations instead of 4th and 1s that they've been getting to for running it on 3rd and 5 and 3rd and 6. I know that sounds crazy, but coaches do what coaches do most of the time, even if it's not working. And I think we could give you some classic examples of the Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs last year when they're running it on early downs. You look up, they've ran it on 10 first downs and they've made 1 yard per carry, but they just keep doing it. They decide what their game plan is going to be, and they don't deviate it enough. And that's the only thing I worry about from the Lions.
As we show this graphic right now where the teams are in terms of their future strength of schedule, we're going to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles momentarily. They play the one of the easier schedules moving forward, and they've already played the 4th easiest schedule in the NFL. So that record has been built in large part by playing an easier schedule. Look where the Detroit Lions are comparatively speaking. They've played a much more difficult schedule than the Philadelphia Eagles. They sit in the middle of the graphic at the top of the screen there, having played about a league average strength of schedule to date, and they're going to be playing the 4th toughest strength of schedule in the future, there where that blue boxes around their logo in the bottom graphic. So they've got a difficult schedule to close out the rest of the way. They can't afford to stumble down the stretch because they've got the Vikings, who also have a tough schedule, and the Philadelphia Eagles, who have a far easier schedule, breathing down their necks from a record perspective. But you do see a lot of these teams over there on the left part of the graphic. I want to call your attention to this, everybody. The lower left corner. See how many of those NFC teams are circled or squared in. The squares are the teams that are currently in the playoffs if the season ended today. The circled teams are the teams that are in wildcard contention. All of these teams, there's 6 of them. They have played the most difficult schedule year to date in the NFL, those 6 teams. And yet those 6 teams are all in the playoff hunt. And you could see how many of those teams have an easier schedule down the stretch, highlighted by a couple teams fighting to get in right now. The Atlanta Falcons, the Arizona Cardinals are 2 teams They're at the edge there. They're going to be getting an easier schedule the rest of the way. Of course, standing in front of them right now for the Atlanta Falcons specifically is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who also have an easier schedule. So going to be fascinating. These teams have overcome a lot so far this season, and their schedules are going to lighten up a little bit down the stretch. Let's talk about those Philadelphia Eagles, Coach. They've played the fourth easiest schedule year to date in the NFL. What's one thing that you think you like the most about this team that could allow them to get back to the Super Bowl and potentially win it this time around?
Well, obviously, the addition of Saquon Barkley and what he's done for their team. In the splits of A.J. Brown, when A.J. Brown plays, look at the splits of that offense and the success of their team, and look at the splits when he's not playing. And right now, he's healthy and he's playing, and Saquon's playing at a high level. I think that makes it easier on Jalen Hurts, opens it up for him to run the football more. And like you talked about earlier, Jalen Hurts is a guy that'll run the ball in the big game. And I probably should have mentioned that as a detriment for Baltimore in the bigger games. Lamar doesn't run, but Jalen Hurts does. And when you've got to worry about Barkley and A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, that puts you in the Baltimore category of all your weapons, probably better. Your top three weapons overall are better than their top three overall. But at the same time, Jalen Hurts is not afraid to run the ball in those big situations. And I think that's what can take them over to the Super Bowl. And their defense is obviously better than it was last year.
Yeah, their defense behind Vic Fangio is coming along a lot better down the stretch here. They need to try to stay healthy. Obviously, they lost Brandon Graham a couple weeks ago. What is something, though, that's concerning to you, that you're maybe a crack in the foundation that you're starting to notice, or the thing that you ultimately think might hold this team back from winning the Super Bowl this year?
Well, there's really two, and one of them just popped up, the A.J. Brown stuff.
Yep.
That is a locker room cancer. It's a locker room killer. And you saw two different guys show two different sides of it. With Graham saying, "Hey, he's got to handle that better. He shouldn't do that." I'm on that side of it. You don't call him out in the media. That's a talk you have in private. That's you stand there and you go up to him and say, "Jalen, here's the deal. I'm open. Da da da. When I get the one-on-one, throw me the ball." Now, also, I want to defend a little bit. When y'all showed the other guy that was explaining and showing, AJ in pink shoes and he's got to see him, they're not going to see him because that's not the first look. And if he throws the first look, he's never going to see AJ. And AJ wasn't designed to be the first look on a couple of those when he's not looking at him. So, there's both sides of that equation. But that all said, what I'm also worried about is a little bit is everybody's going, wow, look, we were worried about him losing Jason Kelsey and the offensive line and losing some parts and maybe they're going to be good. But everybody's like, oh, their offensive line's fine. They're really good. I think they're still comparing them to what they thought they would be instead of what they really are. But I see some chinks in that offensive line, not big ones, but I see some chinks in that offensive line that could cause them some problems as they play better and better teams as we move forward.
Don't disagree. Shared it before. A little bit worried about what this team might do if in those games where that run game gets stopped, somebody comes up and stops that run game early, or they fall behind early, as they tend to do. They're not like synced up right away at the onset. They're not one of these teams that has a great script that goes down and scores quickly like they were doing in that 2022 season where they were building the quick leads and forcing everybody to chase them. They, generally speaking, are letting everybody stay in the game. And that could put some scoreboard pressure on them if somebody gets a lucky score or whatnot, and then the Eagles find themselves in a hole. So I don't like the way that they're playing from that perspective. Let's talk about the Seattle Seahawks. They're currently in the NFC West, the number one seed in the West. They're likely to land the 3 seed if the playoffs were to start today. Coach, what's something that you like about Geno Smith and the Seattle Seahawks team that could give them some hope towards being able to make a run here into the postseason?
That is what I like is Geno Smith. And there's no substitute in the NFL for a good quarterback. There's no substitute for accuracy. Geno Smith over the last 2 years is the most accurate quarterback in the league. Just straight accuracy. So for him to turn the ball over, it's usually a tip. It's not a pass that's behind. It's not a pass that's overthrown as much and those kinds of things. And I just think that he's getting more and more comfortable. And with that running game you saw last week, just with Zach Charbonnet in there. Everybody's worried, will the running game dip off a little bit? Can they still rely on it? And he showed that he's a great running back too, and they can still do play action. And you've got to pick your poison, especially with the emergence of Jackson Smith-Njigba and what he's done the entire year. There's no flashes in the pan. It's been consistent. But Geno Smith having the ability to throw to him and still got Lockett and rely on the run game. And Geno Smith, to me, is making great decisions and his accuracy's there. I think he's a guy that could surprise people. And he would be a team that you're like, nobody looks and goes, well, I don't want to play them in the playoffs. To me, that's the team I would not want to play in the playoffs.
Interesting. Okay, so the Seahawks are the team that you would not want to play. What's one thing that if you were playing them, you think might be an edge for your squad, something that could hold them back from getting it all done this year?
I just think they're real bland in their defense, and they're willing to, they still kind of treat it like they're the defense of old, where they could line up in a shell and just beat you at every position, beat you at safety, beat you at corner. They've got some great players in place, don't get me wrong, but I think they're a lot more bland, and that's why you see sometimes them struggle with teams just moving the ball up and down the field on them. Is I don't think they're willing to morph on defense into what they need to be, whether that's just say, hey, this isn't working. We're not getting a pass rush. We've got a blitz more. And when you're not willing to do that, and so many teams are, that's one of the good things about the Chiefs. They'll do whatever they've got to do on defense to stop you. He's not afraid to try anything. And I think the Seahawks, and they've had a lot of success, obviously on defense, I think they're not willing to do whatever they've got to do.
Right now, we've got the Packers taking on the Seahawks on Sunday Night Football. I don't know if you had any chance to think about this game at all, Coach, but it's going to be a great game and what is going to be an outstanding Week 15 Sunday slate. The Packers right now are laying 2.5 points on the road in Seattle. Total is sitting right around 46.5 to 47. Any quick little nugget that you have on that game? You prefer a team there from a value perspective, from a betting perspective?
That's going to be an interesting game because the Packers are running the ball. As everybody knows, they're in the split zone. They're doing so many things in the running game, and but Jordan Love's inconsistencies have caused me, some problem. They got him hot last year. You talked about this at some point. Is they got him throwing the ball early and more often, and I think they're reading their own press clippings, so to speak, about that run game and the creativity of it, and they're doing it too much, just like we talked about Houston doing it too much. And I think that's taking away from how they got hot going into the playoffs last year, just like you said. And to me, that's a problem. And if they stay married to that, I think Seattle can win this game at home. But if they turn Jordan Love loose, and like I said, you get that Seattle defense that I don't think is willing to morph into what they need to. But if they turn Jordan Love loose and do that, I think Green Bay will win that game. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're too married to it. And I think you see a very tightly contested game. I think you see a lower scoring game because they won't turn Jordan Love loose. And I think you see Seattle probably win it at the end.
All right, excellent insight there. We'll talk about the Green Bay Packers momentarily. First, let's talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You got Baker Mayfield's resurgence down there. A lot of people didn't think that he was going to be able to get it done with Dave Canales leaving town, but brought in a new offensive coordinator, and that offense looks incredible. We've got to get Bucky Irving back. I need Bucky to coach. I've got a long shot bet. I want to say it was like 28-1. I took Bucky Irving to lead rookies in rushing yards that we took before the start of the season. And we got it. Bucky's leading right now, but we can't afford him to miss more games down the stretch. So his back is locking up on him. We need Bucky out there. Get those rehab specialists at Tampa Bay working overtime on Bucky. What is one thing that you like about this Buccaneers offense or defense that you think could allow them to make a run in the postseason?
I think they play decent complementary football right now on both sides. They don't have, you look at Baker Mayfield, obviously what he's done with him has been amazing. But on defense, they've still got some really good pieces over there. You saw those guys making some plays with White at linebacker. He could blitz the quarterback. He could still get back in pass coverage. And I think they play the best, to me, one of the best teams, especially for what they've got. best complementary football. I still think they don't feel like we've got to go out and outscore you. I don't think they feel like they've got to get into a defensive struggle. They feel like Baker can lead them down the field, and they're going to take what the defense gives on that side of the ball. And when they're on defense, I think they take away a lot of options that the offense wants to and make you beat them in a way you don't want to. So good complementary football is the way I would say that they're going to have a chance.
I love that answer because I couldn't agree more. This team just has so much at so many different spots. They're not excelling at any one spot. Bucky's been exciting as an explosive playmaker, but they got Mike Evans back healthy. It's a shame that they're not going to be able to do anything with Chris Godwin down the stretch here. But the way that they get that defense to play for Todd Bowles is extremely great to see. Tell me about something you do think will hold this team back ultimately, though, from winning the Super Bowl this year.
Well, besides the point that I love your Bucky Irving bet, he might be a top 5 back in the league right now. Maybe I love that guy. But what's holding them back, I think, in the end, you got Mike Evans back and you got K-Dot, and he's not going to win the game for you. But when it's a tough moment, when it's those third downs that you've got to have, when you've got to lead or you're behind, do you really think that Sterling Shepard and Jalen McMillan can keep making plays on a consistent level and beating guys in those tougher moments? I don't think they can. And I think that's what's going to lead to their downfall.
All right, let's pivot back to the NFC North. We've got 2 teams in back-to-back succession here to discuss. And the first one is the Minnesota Vikings, which we've seen a resurgence in Sam Darnold under a great coach in Kevin O'Connell. This team is doing a lot of things that's really exemplary in terms of just getting the ball to some of their playmakers and letting them take advantage of it and scheming up things and just really creative coaching, in my opinion, on both sides of the ball, because you got an interesting defense as well that approaches the game much differently than most teams in terms of the way that they play and the way that they blitz and the way that they attack the offense. Talk to me about something that you like about this version of the Minnesota Vikings that you think could give them a high ceiling and make a run through the playoffs.
I hate to give you the same answer I gave for Tampa Bay, but I really think it is. I think Kevin O'Connell has obviously shown what a great creative coach he is with taking another quarterback and getting him to play at a high level when Sam Darnold's never really shown that he can play at this high level consistently. 28-10 and touchdown to interception ratio. And he gets everybody involved, whether it's Aaron Jones, he's willing to run the ball or willing to throw it to the running back if he needs to. They're willing to throw it. Obviously, they got Justin Jefferson, and I think Jordan Addison's an unbelievable play. But the complementary defense, too, they can do the same thing I told you. They can beat you on defense with that 6-man look, backing off to Brian Flores schemes guys up to come open, even if he's rushing 4 where a guy comes wide open, just because the way he's running that defense. And they're not afraid to try things on the back end. With that 6-man look, they'll play man back there. They'll still play zone. They'll play quarters. They'll roll to 1 high. They will do almost anything, but they're very, very complimentary because I really do think that some teams on offense, the Minnesota Vikings, scare them to death from what they're going to see out of that defense. So good complementary football on either side, because complimentary to me is we can beat you one of 2 ways. And not everybody in this league can do that, but they're definitely one of the ones that can do that.
What do you think about the Green Bay Packers? Well, first, what's the thing that's going to hold them back, though, ultimately from getting it done? Though they're complimentary, what are they lacking that stands out the most to you right now?
Well, what stands out the most is that time. You saw it the other day. The Atlanta Falcons are not a good pressure team on the quarterback, and the Atlanta Falcons got to them. The offensive line gave in, and while they've held up at times, Darnold's legs help him a lot. But if you do a good job, and Coach Belichick made that, if you do a good job on the edges, and those guys, you're saying, hey, look, you don't get a 2-way go to get to the quarterback. You got to go outside, stay even with them. Don't run up the field and open up those alleys where the quarterback can escape. And then you can get pressure on a quarterback with legs, and you can tackle him in the pocket. You can sack him in the pocket. And I thought the Falcons, who are not good at getting after the quarterback, showed the weakness of that offensive line at times. If they've got to step back and drop back and throw it, and they can bring a 4-man rush and get to him and keep him contained with some discipline, and that takes away some of the added strength. Now, you saw him get outside and have a couple big throws to Addison and to Justin Jefferson when he got outside, but when they did a good job, they pressured him, and let's be honest, the Atlanta Falcons are not that good on defense, and they're really not good at pressuring the quarterback, but they were able to show that weakness to me.
If you look at down the stretch, I'm looking at the Minnesota Vikings, some of the pass rushes that they're going to be going up against as it relates to the Chicago Bears. Not a good team in general. Their offense struggles, but they have been able to get a little bit of pressure. The Seattle Seahawks, the Green Bay Packers, and the Detroit Lions, all these teams rank by my metrics right now that I just updated last night, top 14 in pass rush efficiency. And so we'll see. As you mentioned, the Atlanta Falcons, not great. The Arizona Cardinals, the week before that, not great. The Jacksonville Jaguars, a few weeks ago, not great. The Tennessee Titans, not great. The Indianapolis Colts, not great. They just played about 5 out of their prior 6 games versus teams that ranked bottom 11 in the NFL in pass rush efficiency. They're going to close out the season playing more difficult teams. And I just mentioned 3 of those teams. It's interesting, Coach. I just mentioned the Minnesota Vikings schedule. After the Bears this week, they play the Seahawks, the Packers, and the Detroit Lions. The last 2 of those games are on the road. Look at who's in the standings right here. The Seahawks, the Packers, and the Detroit Lions. Then they're probably going to go into the playoffs and play another one of those teams once again. So just a really interesting close to the season for the Minnesota Vikings. Let's pivot to the Green Bay Packers. We talked about this team a little bit, tiptoed around them much already. So maybe you can make this quick if you want. What's something that you like about the Packers that you think gives them upside to compete and potentially make a run through the 2024 playoffs?
I still think Jordan Love's capable of getting hot if they open it up, and he's got a lot of weapons. Tucker Kraft has really emerged a really good tight end. They've shown they know how to use him, and I like Dontavian Wicks. I like Christian. I like all their receivers. I think they can score points and score them quickly, and we've seen them have to do that on a couple of occasions if they do open it up.
I'm still bitter about them getting no targets, no catches to Jaden Reed the other day. That one's not going to sit well with me for a while. But yeah, I just think that this team does need to open it up. They need to. They better get that clicking as they head down into the postseason. What's one of the things, and maybe it's too much reliance on that ground game, you're going to tell me, but what's one of the things that you think could hold them back for making that run into the playoffs?
And that's exactly what it is. They're not doing I wouldn't say anything. They're not doing the same things they did last year when they went on the run when nobody expected them to. They've morphed out of that. So if they don't do that and see that the NFL, you've got to be able to throw the football and throw it efficiently and throw it effectively, it's just going to be tough to win. It's going to be tough to win all those games. You've got to win against those good teams to make a run into the playoffs.
Last but not least, we've got the Washington Commanders sitting here at 8-5. They're off of a bye, so they're kind of out of sight, out of mind a little bit. But they've got a game this weekend against the Saints, who are probably not going to be starting Derek Carr. And, they've got to stay hot down the stretch here to get into the playoffs. But it looks like a team that certainly has the chance to get in there. If they do get into the postseason, Coach, what is one thing that you think they could do that could potentially allow them to go on a run? I mean, they still are lacking from a talent perspective comparatively to all of these teams. So it's not going to be easy, but what's something that you like most about this team?
Is there any chance they could be the Green Bay Packers of last year and Jordan Love got crazy hot? Jaden Daniels has shown that he can be crazy hot if you think about the beginning of the year and what they were doing in efficiency. If they can fight the Cliff Kingsbury fall off late in the year, we've had that.
Yep.
But to me, the only way they can is if Jaden Daniels, if they get a little more creative on offense, throw a few different twists in there, and Jaden Daniels gets hot just like Jordan Love last year.
Absolutely. And then with the negative for the Washington Commanders, what is ultimately potentially going to prevent them from doing much of anything in the postseason?
obviously their talent disparity facing the teams that they're going to face in the playoff at every position, not every, but a lot of the positions. And at the same time, defensively, it's just still too easy to be very efficient throwing the football on those guys. And while they've shored up a little bit better than they were last year. Last year, I think they were worst or second to worst in the league, and they've shored up a little bit. I still think they're just too easy to move the ball on, and unless your defense, they're going to have to outscore people because that defense ain't going to get it done.
Yeah, and so then you're going to need that creativity from Kingsbury, and he's going to have to. I think you were on a few weeks back, and you mentioned how he just gets a little bit stale and then predictable. He's going to have to. Hopefully, he spent his bye week, Coach, digging through his old playbooks or studying some other teams in the league, and starts to pull some new things into what he's working with. We can't thank you enough, Coach. One thing I do want to say is I saw that you mentioned. I saw on your Twitter handle that Pat McAfee was alluding to you on his last show. This is the guy you want. This is if you want somebody on your show who knows ball, Pat, and you want to bring Coach Kelley on. He's a great guest for us. He'd be a great guest for you as well. So, Coach Kelley, certainly the fans of our show love and appreciate when you come on. Anything out there that you're looking to promote right now, or how's things going with the season that you're in from a football perspective, and what you're looking to do right now?
We just lost in the high school playoffs and had a good season. Try to start a new program, turn it around that hadn't had much or any success. But I'm not really looking to promote anything. I'm just diving in. I think the reason I can identify with your listeners and with you are we love the NFL. I have always loved the NFL, and I love this time of the year. And of course, we love the college football playoffs and stuff. But to me, the NFL is where it's at. You get so many people that say college is better. Heck, college isn't nearly as pure as it was with the NIL. So love the NFL, love the way it's shaping up. Wish they would, you keep talking about the officiating and some of the things they're missing, the face mask, but finding guys later and just doing that craziness. I mean, they've got the best product on the planet as far as sports goes, and everybody knows that. Just find a way to fix that stuff. Have the quick replay reviews of some of that stuff like you're talking about. We love the new auto assist replay or whatever it is that's helping out. But love the NFL playoffs. Love coming up. Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure. Warren, you're the best in the business.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on board with us, and make sure that you guys follow Coach Kelley over on Twitter or X. Between now and the postseason, we'll maybe bring him back on in the new year after Christmas and New Year's. We'll bring him on, talk a little bit about playoffs. So thanks for joining us, Coach. Let's go ahead now and turn our attention to one more topic before we get into this slate of games for Week 15, which is ridiculous if you guys haven't seen already. But before we do that, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the Buffalo Bills coaching. All right, so we're going to dive in here a little bit to Buffalo Bills and Sean McDermott and what is, an issue for them, something that has occurred in the past that I don't think they're ever going to get over, that is going to be there. And I mentioned this at the start of the season. So why not continue to harp on this? Let's go ahead and play back what you guys probably saw at the end of the Buffalo Bills LA Rams game. Tom Brady hit the nail on the head. We'll add some flavor to it as well, but go ahead and roll that clip.
And they can't use a timeout or they're forced to do an onside kick. They go jumbo here. Will they just sneak Josh Allen again? They will. Allen on the sneak. I don't think he got it. He did not. And now they're going to have to use a timeout to your point.
All right, pause it right here, Matt.
Onside kick.
One thing I want you guys to note, and I'm going to make Matt go back and start this over, is because I don't have the audio of this particular clip. After the game, their head coach, Sean McDermott, comes out and says, "This is our best play that we have. We called our best play in this situation, and it was the QB sneak." And what I am going to tell you guys right now is there's a variety of ways to QB sneak. And I want you to tell me if you see them call the same exact QB sneak twice. Because what I am seeing on the first play, which he says is their best play in their playbook, is they rotate in behind Josh Allen, a fourth string tight end, and he's the only pusher on this play. And they obviously come up short. You have a guy from the Rams who dives over and knocks the pusher off the ball. He's the fourth string tight end. He's the only pusher. And then I'm not going to say anything. You can watch the second play that they run, and you can tell me if that second play is the same sneak as the first play. Let's go ahead and run it all the way again.
Use a timeout, or they're forced to do an onside kick. They go jumbo here. Will they just sneak Josh Allen again? They will. Allen on the sneak. Allen, I don't think he got it. He did not. And now they're going to have to use a timeout, to your point. We're going to have an onside kick. It changes the thought process. Yeah, we got a 3% chance on an onside kick. To me, take 3 shots throwing it, don't use a timeout, and then you can kick it deep, use your 3 timeouts, and still get the ball with good time. And try a long field goal. Try the long field goal. Well, that changed that. It changes the entire complexity of the last minute and 2 seconds of the game. Even if they score, what's the big deal? They're going to have to go for a 3% chance for an onside kick. They're not like that one bit. That could have just cost them the game right there. First things first, they got to try to get in. Down by 9, 1:02 to go.
Look how different this looks. Look how different of a play call that is.
Yes, touchdown Buffalo with 55 seconds left. Again, this is the way these onside kicks are. There's very low percentage chance of doing it. Not to harp on it, but I thought that quarterback sneak call on first down was absolutely the wrong decision. To just put you in a situation now where they could have kicked it deep, still with a lot of time left remaining, and been a much better chance of field position if they could get a stop. But going for the onside kick, they're tough to get, not to put it past them. Seen a lot of crazy things today that I didn't think I'd see, but it's been some tough odds. 7.7% NFL average.
All right, you can cut it here. I don't want us to get blocked or whatever with playing too much game footage. But obviously Tom Brady's 100% correct. The Bills lost that game, and you could say they might not have been able to win the game. Fair. They lost the game when they ran the ball on the first down and didn't get into the end zone. And Sean McDermott, like I said, comes out at the end of the game and says that's our highest percentage play. But it's impossible for him to be telling the truth, because why then on the second down play did they not use the same exact quarterback sneak where they had 3 guys standing behind him, starters pushing him into the end zone? You got fullback, you got running back, you got a starting tight end back there pushing. Instead, they rotate their 4th string running back in on that first tight end in that first play. It's not the same play, Sean. It's not the same play. It's a lower percentage play, and yet that's what you called on first down. And you lost the game because you didn't score a touchdown there. That's simple. You might not have been able to win it otherwise. Some things would have to go your way. And as Tom Brady explained it perfectly, if you have those 3 timeouts and you save them for a reason so that you can use them on defense. You don't try to burn those timeouts on offense so that in a late game situation, you can get the ball back, because they have 3 downs and then they have to punt, and you have 3 timeouts. You call one after every down. First down timeout, second down timeout, third down timeout. Hardly any time goes off the clock, you get a chance. That's why you save your timeouts in a close game. To burn one on first down is asinine. Let's hear what he said after the game in terms of taking responsibility for this loss.
And that's on me. The end of game situation on offense, we needed we're in a tough situation. 3 timeouts. They were holding 3 timeouts. I got a good field goal kicker. We needed to run the clock and move the chains, and that's on me. We didn't do that there, and that's my fault.
John, were you on board with the 3 play calls, the 3 passes?
My bad. This is not the right video. I thought we had a different video. Right. Cut. Do we have another video? I don't know if it says. Maybe we don't have another video. There's a video of Sean McDermott taking the blame for that loss, for calling that timeout, for the decision to call that play after the game. He took full responsibility for that. Now, that was the Buffalo Bills' third loss of the season. The reason I'm harping on this is because it continues to happen, and it will happen again, in my opinion, in the playoffs. Do you remember what his second loss of the year was? The Buffalo Bills lost immediately prior to this one. It was a couple months ago, so you may not remember it. It was against the Houston Texans. And the clip that you just heard was Sean McDermott apologizing after that loss as well and taking responsibility for that loss as well. Why don't you pull up the article that showed what he was apologizing for, if you can remember the game against the Houston Texans. Here you could see head-scratching Bills play calling leads to Texans walk-off field goal. Sean McDermott took full responsibility for the disastrous clock management on Sunday that helped hand the Texans a 23-20 win. The Buffalo coach said, "That's on me," several times, which you heard in the video clip, as he tried to explain what happened that caused the Bills to go to the air 3 straight times with the game tied at 20 and Buffalo at his own 3-yard line with 32 seconds to play. Instead of going to the run game to force the Texans to use their timeouts, Josh Allen unsuccessfully tried to pass the ball 3 straight times, only 11 seconds off the clock. We know the rest. The Houston Texans got the ball and kicked a last-second field goal that would not have been possible for them to kick had the Buffalo Bills not passed the ball 3 straight times and forced the Houston Texans to use those timeouts. So, once again, that was another loss. I don't have the clip that showed some of the commentary after the first loss of the season, but that was to the Baltimore Ravens. There was a lot of negativity surrounding the outcome of that game. It was not a close game. It was a blowout, but some of the play calling and decision-making early on in that game allowed the Baltimore Ravens to build a massive lead, and Sean McDermott was once again forced to address that after the game. Who can remember the Buffalo Bills losing to the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, or maybe it was the divisional round a few years ago, where they weren't aggressive enough? And Sean McDermott came out and said, "Never again. We're going to be more aggressive after this. We know we have to score to compete with Patrick Mahomes." They do not have a good enough handle on situational football. And Coach Kelley, it sounded to me, I don't know if you guys in the chat have any comments, it sounded to me like Coach Kelley, I didn't get his final prediction, that he kind of liked the Bills. He doesn't think the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl this year. Coming out of the AFC, I think he kind of liked the Bills. And the Bills are always going to have this as a thorn in their side. If you stack up some of the other coaches, a lot of coaches in the NFL aren't perfect, but there are some staffs that I think do a better job of late game management and situational awareness than do the Buffalo Bills. They haven't fixed it. I worry that it is going to be their downfall. All right, now let's pivot a little bit here, and I want to talk to you guys about this upcoming slate of games. So I could tell you about the games just verbally, but I always believe when you got a picture speaks volumes. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Let's throw up this picture. Can you guys appreciate how glorious this looks? First of all, what's missing from this graphic? 4:05 kickoffs. We have no 4:05 kickoffs. None. We have early games, we have late games. You know what else is missing? A 9-game, 1 o'clock slate. We don't have a 9-game, 1 o'clock slate. We don't have an 8-game, 1 o'clock slate. We have only 7 games at 1 o'clock. They have stacked 5 games at 4:25. The late kicks, 5 games. And not just any old 5 games. Look at some of these games that we're going to get here at the 4:25 slate. Versus the Lions, 10-3 versus 12-1. The Steelers versus the Eagles, 10-3 versus 11-2. We also have 2 games, one in the NFC, one in the AFC, that matter immensely to both teams from a playoff perspective. The Colts, sitting at 6-7, still have life to make the AFC playoffs. They are off of a bye, and they are taking on the Denver Broncos, who are fighting for the Colts for a playoff spot because they are going to be a wild card team. But theoretically, if the Indianapolis Colts beat the Denver Broncos, they could leapfrog them eventually, and they have the head-to-head and knock the Broncos out of the playoff contention. So this game is massively important to both of these teams. And then in the NFC, you've got the Bucs at 7-6 taking on the Chargers, who are obviously an AFC team. But that game is vital to both of these teams from a playoff perspective. So I'm sort of talking over the Patriots and the Cardinals, but that late slate of games is ridiculous. It's so good. And then, of course, it leads us right into Sunday Night Football, where we've got like an old, I don't know if they call it a rivalry, but the Packers and the Seahawks, that's always good football, in my opinion. Just battles there. I remember in the past, Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, etc. So you got the Packers and Seahawks on Sunday Night Football. Now, the early kicks, the thing about the early kicks are all the good teams are spread out. But what I want you to notice is most of the bad teams are at home. You got the 3-10, let's start at the bottom and work our way up. The 3-10 Titans are at home, hosting the Bengals. The 2-11 Giants are at home, hosting the Ravens. The 5-8 Saints, who are without their starting quarterback, are at home, hosting the Commanders. The 3-10 Jaguars are at home, hosting the Jets. Skip the Texans because that's a competitive game against the Dolphins. Two teams that need to win to make the playoffs. And you got the Browns 3-10 hosting the Kansas City Chiefs, and you got the Panthers at 3-10 hosting the Dallas Cowboys. So most of the good teams are on the road here. You're going to have a lot of road favorites, whether it's the Ravens, the Commanders, the Chiefs, etc. So I think the 1 p.m. slate's not that great, but there's going to be interesting games because the point spreads aren't going to be too massive because so many of these teams are road favorites here. But what are these teams at home going to give you? What are these teams that are hosting these games? I mean, they stand more to gain by losing these games, no? And the Giants want to lose this game, obviously, yeah. Like their decision-making in last week's game clearly showed, although they almost sent the game to overtime, that they were okay with not winning that game as it relates to their aggressiveness in the opponent territory. Now, the Ravens have a massive point spread here, 15 points on the road. It's humongous, but that's really the only game that's ridiculous like that from a point spread perspective. So I think these games are going to be a ton of fun. This is a day I highly encourage you, start planning ahead, just like I was telling you about planning out these shows here. I highly encourage you, if you are looking to do any type of holiday gathering, you want to make an excuse to have a holiday party or whatnot, I could tell you I am doing that on Sunday. I'm inviting some buddies and some friends, the wife's friends, etc., over, and we're going to have spread out. We got all TVs all over the place, obviously. We're going to be watching these games closely, but we're going to be having a little bit of holiday entertaining as well. And it's a great day to do it because there's great games all afternoon and night on Sunday. December 15th, week 15. It could be the best organized slate of games that we will get this entire season. So start planning for it now. Get prepared. A lot of times there's so much effort and energy from a sweating your bets perspective that goes into the 1 p.m. slate. And there's only 3 games at 4 p.m., in that window. There's only one kickoff at 4:25. You can kind of relax a little bit. That's not going to be the case. Start mentally getting yourself ready. That the bets are going to be flowing in that late slate. There's going to be a ton of action in that late slate, a ton of good games and important games. You got to be focused all the way through. It's going to be the best Sunday of the year, in my opinion. The best Sunday of the year for football. I'm calling it right now. Get ready. This upcoming Sunday is going to be spectacular. All right, let's talk a little bit about the strength of schedule the rest of the way. All right, strength of schedule. Let's begin with what we normally look at, which is defensive efficiency of opponents. we're going to start looking at offenses. What are offenses going up against this week? At the top, we're seeing weeks 9 to 14. Which offenses played the toughest schedule of defenses during this stretch? The Jaguars played a tough defense schedule weeks 9 to 14 over the prior 6 weeks. The Arizona Cardinals, the Cleveland Browns, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Green Bay Packers round out the top 5 most difficult schedules of offenses faced over the last 6 weeks. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, Philadelphia Eagles, the Giants, the Miami Dolphins, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Seattle Seahawks. These teams played the easiest schedule of offenses over the last 6 weeks. What changes this week? Where are some big changes this week? Well, if you start over on the left, the Arizona Cardinals, after having played the second most difficult schedule of opposing defenses, they are now their offense is going to look a lot better. Their offense is now going to be playing a much weaker defense in the New England Patriots. That bodes well for the Arizona Cardinals offense to have a little bit more success than they've had over the prior 6 weeks playing the second toughest schedule of opposing defenses. Some of these other teams sort of qualify as well, though not as big of a change. The Atlanta Falcons offense should look a little bit better here in their game against the Las Vegas Raiders on Monday Night Football. Doubleheader on Monday night, by the way, guys. The Washington Commanders offense should look a little bit better in this game against the Saints defense, particularly the ground game. The same thing could be said about the New York Jets going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars and the San Francisco 49ers. Of course, they got back on track in a big way last week against the Chicago Bears. Now the San Francisco 49ers on Thursday night take on the LA Rams. On the opposite end of the spectrum, it will get more difficult for the Philadelphia Eagles offense. They are going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. It's a big jump. They played the easiest schedule of opposing defenses over the prior 6 weeks. They're now going up against the Steelers, a big jump in efficiency of the opposing defense. Same thing is true for the Miami Dolphins, who have played the third easiest schedule of opposing defenses. So it's been easier for the offense of the Miami Dolphins. Now they're going up against the Houston Texans defense off of a bye. Minnesota's offense, it's going to be a little bit more challenging for them as well, going up against the Chicago Bears defense. I know the Chicago Bears not a great team. That pass defense has been able to get off the quarterback a little bit, has been a little bit good in the secondary, though they did not look that way on Sunday against the San Francisco 49ers. What type of effort are they going to be able to bring? You had the new coach bump, and didn't really bump anything except for them getting back home on their flight with probably less positivity. And now they've got to get up for a game against the Minnesota Vikings. We'll see if they're able to do that. Let's switch over to look at opposing offenses from a strength of schedule perspective. All right, we'll get the graphic up here momentarily, but what we're going to look at, like we normally do at this time, is the schedule difficulty that opposing teams will face. Here we go. Past offensive efficiency of opponents the last 6 weeks. So for your defense, have you been playing a more difficult schedule of offenses? Green Bay Packers are playing a difficult schedule of offenses. Seattle, San Francisco, Las Vegas, and Indianapolis, all those teams played difficult schedules of opposing offenses. Any of those teams going to be playing easy schedules this week? Not really. And the closest thing to it, and I was reluctant to even circle these two teams, was the Indianapolis Colts and the Carolina Panthers playing easier offenses than what they've been playing down the stretch, but it's not really that much easier. And if you look at the Denver Broncos, that offense is trending in a far different direction than they were the first 4 weeks of the season as well. So I wouldn't really consider that to be quote unquote easy for the Indianapolis Colts. And yeah, the Dallas Cowboys, a lot of question marks there, but that offense is getting a little bit healthier, as we saw them nearly upset the Cincinnati Bengals. If they bring the same type of effort, I would not necessarily say that that's an easy offense to go up against, though it is not a great offense. But they are looking a lot better than what they were 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we've got some defenses, the Detroit Lions, the Tennessee Titans, the New Orleans Saints. Those 3 I circled in particular, who are going up against easier offenses this week than what they have been playing. If you look at more difficult, what am I saying here? The Detroit Lions have played the third easiest schedule of opposing offenses over the prior 6 weeks. Now they're going up against the Buffalo Bills, one of the best offenses in the NFL. The Tennessee Titans have been playing some easier schedules of offenses. They took on the Jacksonville Jaguars last week, almost lost. Now they're going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. You do question the motivation of the Bengals there, but it is definitely a much more talented offense than what the Titans have been playing. And then the Saints obviously taking on the Washington Commanders, as we mentioned previously. So there you go. Motivation is definitely a factor down the stretch when we start thinking about who has what to prove, what they're playing for, what they're looking to showcase. Definitely gets factored in late in the season. You need to consider that when you're placing your wagers. I don't know that the Tennessee Titans looked like nobody wanted to score. I certainly was expecting that team and the Tennessee Titans to come out with a little bit more of I thought they really wanted to win. I thought their coaching staff came out with the desire to win, but them just sticking their head down and running back down the field to start really gave me concern that this team had any sort of confidence in Will Levis. Because if you look at the strengths and weaknesses of the Jacksonville Jaguars, their strength is their run defense. Their weakness is their secondary. Their weakness is what they've been getting destroyed in the secondary for the entire season. And so to come out and say, we're just going to run the ball and not attack your weakness when you're a much worse pass defense than run defense, and you're a much worse pass defense than anybody else that we've been playing on the season, that really spat in the face of some of the things that the coaching staff was talking about with regard to their confidence in Will Levis, how they felt Will Levis was looking good, all these positive things that they had been saying for weeks about Will Levis. They just did the exact opposite and didn't want anything to do with Will Levis and just wanted to run the ball against a much better run defense than pass defense. Made no sense to me at all. Therefore, was not shocking that Ridley didn't do well. Will Levis didn't put up any stats. The game didn't go over the total. I mean, it was a disaster from that respect because the coaching staff just went in the opposite direction. And so that's where some of these games, it's just the way that it goes with the old assumption of rational coaching. You assume that a team is going to do X, Y, and Z to attack the weakness of their opponent. This one, it's not very complicated. The pass defense stinks. The run defense is better. This is how we should attack with a quarterback that has shown some flashes, and your passing attack is healthy and has come alive, and they do the exact opposite. So that was disappointing, but I certainly think that in the future, looking at these games, that's one of the things I was highlighting in the slate of 1 p.m. games versus the 4 p.m. games. We saw last week a lot of those teams that are now part of this 1 p.m. slate, the bad teams that are 3-10, teams that are 4-9, etc. What are these teams actually doing? How much effort are they putting forth in their game plan? Do they really even want to win these games? You really do have to start thinking about that when you are trying to handicap and bet from a sides, totals, teasers, props perspective, DFS, etc. What are we going to get out of these teams that stink, etc.? So whereas the teams that are fighting for playoff contention or are in the playoffs as of right now, fighting for seeding, you kind of know what you're going to get there. Now, there's still edges to be had in the games that there might not be as much motivational factors if you can get some scoop as to what those teams might be thinking, might be doing, might be trying. So that's going to be interesting. With that said, I got to tell you what I'm going to be doing. This show has been going on for 2 hours. Kudos to you guys for hanging in there with us. I think we've been giving you some great analysis along the way. That segment with Coach Kevin Kelley was incredible. He's so learned and studies the NFL. Like he said, we're both NFL junkies and we love talking about the NFL, but didn't plan for it to be going on this long. But my task, what I'm going to be doing is grabbing a chainsaw and chopping up a tree, getting some firewood off of it, a dead tree that fell in my yard. Something that is not a regular occurrence for me, especially not during the football season, but is not going to take me too much time because I already got started a little bit the other day. So nobody guessed it. A lot of people guessed as I lost my driver's license or something, which I did, and I had to go get a new one from the DMV not long ago. I lost my entire wallet. That sucked, replacing all your cards and et cetera, and your license, et cetera. So now I've got one of those things that has an air tag on it, which could be bad. Like, I don't know what but now I've got my wallet now has an air tag. So if I ever lose it, then I can find where it is. Assuming somebody doesn't take the air tag out of it, I guess, which would be the most obvious thing that you would do if you didn't want to return a wallet, is just take out the air tag. But at least it's better than not having one. The best case scenario is obviously don't lose it. So at any rate, I got this jacket at the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. Thank you, Peter. This was got this in the Super Bowl, Las Vegas. So many good things at that Super Bowl. Got that football that's over my shoulder right there as well from that Super Bowl. Loved that Super Bowl. It was a lot of fun in Las Vegas last year. This year's Super Bowl is down in New Orleans. Actually, we're going to get, I think Rich Rebar is going down there. Ray Summerlin is going down there. So we're going to maybe have a sharp football analysis meetup down there at the Super Bowl in New Orleans the week before the Super Bowl. So I'll be down there, obviously, as I always am for the Super Bowl. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But I hope that you guys start your preparation for Week 15. We've got you well on your way to doing that with this show. But there are some great games that are going to be coming up. Really looking forward to it. With that said, thank you guys for all your comments. Make sure you give us a thumbs up. Helps us keep the algorithm going. And we will see you guys on Friday with best bets for the week, noon Eastern. Like always, tune in.